Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, the Bad, the Score. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Collin.
And today we are continuing our MCU movie reviews with Iron Man 2. So Iron Man 2 was released back in 2010, and it was once again directed by Jon Favreau, and it stars Robert Downey Jr. along with Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, Mickey Rourke, Sam Rockwell, Scarlett Johansson, and Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury. So in this second installment of Iron Man 2, it takes place 6 months later after the events of the first Iron Man movie, and Tony Stark's got a lot of pressure on his hands. The government wants Tony to turn in the Iron Man suit to the U.S. military, and not only that, he is dying. As much as that arc reactor on his chest in the first one was keeping him alive, it's also slowly killing him too. So now he's got to figure out how to fix that. And a new villain in town, Ivan Vanko, played by Mickey Rourke, who's also known as Whiplash in this movie. So Whiplash is, he pretty much is the son of a former worker of Stark Industries, and he is out to get vengeance on Tony Stark in this movie. And that's pretty much where the story goes from there. So, Collin, what is your thoughts on Iron Man 2? What do you remember about it? And do you still... Just guess what you like, Collin.
So when I first saw I'm a big Marvel fanboy. To me, I always find Iron Man 2 has been the weakest entry in the MCU. It's the one where they kind of stumbled with the Iron Man character. They focused a little too heavy on cramming in Avengers stuff. And overall, just the story was not on par. Seeing it a second time, especially having all the context of the entire Infinity Saga, I do think that Iron Man 2 works a lot better today than it did back 10 years ago when it came out. My biggest one that I was surprised by, as always, Robert Downey Jr., he's great as a character. The idea of bringing in Don Cheadle to replace Terrence Howard as Rhodey, I think was honestly a better choice. Once he puts on the War Machine armor, he's Rhodey. And I think, honestly, that's a better choice. So all the returning characters, just as good. Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer. I was surprised how much I liked him as the semi-villain in this movie. I think just because I think Sam Rockwell is such a charismatic actor, I think he brought a lot to this role. And honestly, I would love to see him again in a future installment of something. I would say the action's good. It's kind of hard. This is one of those things to where it just... Oh, my positives are just a bunch of repeating. Like, the action's fun. I like the Iron Man character. Robert Downey Jr. is a good actor, and I think he fits the role. So I'll probably be a lot more nitpicky in this review because just realistically, it's still a fun movie. Even the weakest entry in the MCU, it still has a lot of fun stuff to enjoy. I just think overall that there's a lot of more hits than misses. So, Andrew, what are your positives on Iron Man 2?
Here's my thing about Iron Man 2. I think, once again, Robert Downey Jr. is terrific as the role as Iron Man / Tony Stark. He does have another terrific performance. And the whole cast, I think, is great overall. I like the introduction of Black Widow in this movie. I thought that was really good. And, like you said, I did like Sam Rockwell this movie. I thought he did a really good job playing the semi-villain. And I think this movie still has, and I like that Jon Favreau directed this one again. It still has that same style that I remember from the first Iron Man movie. I do agree. I don't think it's as good as the first Iron movie, but I don't think it's the worst of the MCU movies. I really don't think this is the worst. I think this is actually a good movie. I definitely enjoyed it. I don't think this movie is clustered all the time. I don't think it is. I do have problems with this movie, which I'll address later on, but just talk more about my positives about Iron Man 2. I like the action a lot. There's a great action at the race car track scene. That's really cool. I liked Whiplash. I thought he was a cool villain. And I love his whole, he's got these electric whips that can just take down a car, slice it up, which was pretty neat. And it has that. I like the music a lot. I do like the setup where it's trying to set up Avengers. I didn't think it was that forced, so I thought they did a nice job with that. For the most part, I liked Mickey Rourke as the villain. I thought he was good. I'll get into more of that later. I thought he was pretty good. I liked him. I mean, I like the humor in this movie, as always in the first Iron movie. The humor, for the most part, is good. The visual effects is also, once again, good. I mean, I like the Iron Man suit. I like in this one, they kind of begin experimenting, the different suits he develops and makes, which is also neat. Don Cheadle. Yeah, he's really good in this movie. And I agree with you, Collin. I think he was a good choice for Brody to play Brody / War Machine, and War Machine's really cool in this movie. I love the ending. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but the final battle is really cool. Seeing both him and War Machine teaming up as they're fighting all the bad guys in the movie. Now, Colin, let's talk about the negatives. So, what's your negative on this movie, Colin? What did you not like about Iron Man 2?
So I'll transition from you talking about Mickey Rourke as Whiplash as a positive. To me, I thought Whiplash was not a good villain. Not that his motivations were bad, because honestly, this is the first time where I really kind of dive deep. Like this movie reminds me a lot of Rocky 4, to where especially how the villain's name is Ivan, and the last name's kind of Drago, to where he has a Howard Stark, Tony's dad, kind of backstabbed Ivan's father and exiled him to Russia. He had this kind of very beaten life, so he's trying to avenge his father. I think the motivation is there, but just the execution, he is such a forgettable villain. I don't even think Mickey Rourke is the problem, because he portrays the character well. Maybe because Sam Rockwell, to me, is so much more entertaining. And it could just be that they have it to where Ivan doesn't really speak much English, and he really only has like two or three interactions with the rest of the characters. Everything else, he's in isolation. I also got to say, as much as I think Black Widow in this movie, you got Scarlett Johansson being introduced as Natasha Romanoff, while I think it wasn't as bad as I thought, they still very much treated her as an object rather than the character that we will soon love. They just kind of as like a sex object, to where she has the nice dresses on. They put her in very erotic positions during fights and all that. Her introduction wasn't the strongest. And finally, I just think that there were some missteps with talking about Tony Stark's alcoholism. His relationship with Pepper is kind of on the more bickery side in this one. And overall, it just seems like a lot of studio interference with Iron Man 2. Well, not the most studio interference movie. We'll get into that another time. I do think that Marvel kind of had their fingers in this one a little bit more than Jon Favreau probably wanted them to. But Andrew, what are your negatives on Iron Man 2?
First of all, like I said about my positives, I thought the humor for the most part was good. For the most part, the humor is bad as well. There's too much improv in this movie. A lot of improv going on around. It gets too carried away with it. Like, as much as that race car, I mean, the humor is funny. I just think, like, when you're doing a fun movie, there comes a point where you have to limit the amount of jokes and improv in any movie. I think there has to be a certain limit to it, because at the same time, I want it to be serious as well, and get to what this movie is trying to go for. Like, even like there's just so much of this improv going on. Like, there's a part where he's at the bar talking to Sam Rockwell. There's like too much improv going on there. Like, there's like all this kind of like going back and forth. I'm like, okay, can we stop that? It just loses sometimes those emotional beats. So that's a negative I have. Too much improv and over the top. Just overdoing with the improv in Iron Man 2. My biggest problem too was Whiplash. I thought Mickey Rourke did a good job for the most part. Sometimes you can't really understand what he's saying with his accent. I can't really tell if that's a perfect Russian accent. I'm not Russian, so I wouldn't know. But sometimes it's a little hard to hear what he's saying. I do get a kick out of Mickey Rourke in this movie. I just wish they could have used him more. Like, I just felt like some of the fight scenes he has in this movie, it's just short. And especially at the climax of the movie, he's just like, the fight scene with him and Iron Man and War Machine only lasts for like 2 minutes, and it should have been a bigger part of the movie. Like, he shows up and it's good to be back, and then they just like I don't want to give away what happens, but like, that's it. Much like the race car tracks scene, I thought it could have been a little longer too, with Iron Man and Whiplash going a little longer. I like a good long fight scene. I mean, I'm not asking for an hour-long fight, but like, I don't know, 10 minutes of a fight going on, or, at least something like that. So that was another problem I had with this movie. I don't think this movie is nowhere as good as the first Iron Man. I think it kind of, like, the style's there. You got the rock music going on. You still got that jokes and the Tony Stark charm in it. It's just not as good as the first one. I feel like this movie kind of repeats back to Tony Stark's flaws, which was him being kind of like a party animal with drinking, a playboy and all that, which he is. I just felt like when we saw in the beginning of Iron Man 1, we see that he's kind of a wise guy who doesn't really sort of give a hoot about his company. And I just felt like this one, there's a scene where he just goes back to it again. I mean, it just was kind of too much at times with that. But I mean, other than that though, I liked Iron Man 2. I definitely don't think it's the worst of the Iron Man movies, and I don't think it's the worst in the MCU. I mean, there's the things you can really nitpick about this movie, and I just think it doesn't have that charm that the first Iron Man had. So let's get into the scores of Iron Man 2. So Colin, I'm gonna guess your score. I think you're gonna give this movie a 7.5 out of 10.
Well, one thing that I always think that we should do is, yes, Andrew, a 7.5 out of 10. You are at a very good streak at guessing my scores. And ranking the MCU, I would put this below Iron Man, but also above Incredible Hulk. So it would be the second best one in our 3 reviews so far. So yeah, I think 7.5. It's not the greatest movie, but it's honestly better than a lot of other blockbusters out there. So Andrew, I'm gonna say you're gonna give a similar score. You gave the first Iron Man a lot higher than me, so I'm gonna say you're gonna go an 8 out of 10 for Iron Man 2.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot, and yeah, this movie, like, I agree with you, it's better than the Hulk, and yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I'm gonna go for 8 out of 10. It's a B movie, B minus, B. You know, it's an 80. It's a good movie overall. I enjoy this movie. I like the action in the movie. I mean, it's just not as good as the first one. That's just always a typical thing that kind of bugs me with a lot of these franchises. They're just not always as good as the first one. Sometimes it's not always a bad thing, you know. I mean, it still does justice. It's still a good Iron Man movie, and you should definitely check it out. I think watching, you know, the MCU movies. Do you think they have to watch this movie to get into the Avengers saga? You think, Colin?
I think that if you're trying to kind of beeline it to Infinity War and Endgame, maybe miss out if you're trying to kind of cut back movies. But if you're just if you want to watch all of them, obviously you need to watch this one. But if you're just trying to cut a couple of them down, why not include this one? I think there's a lot more hits and misses. It's definitely not one where we'll get into another day where it's just like, it's not like Incredible Hulk where it's like, don't even think of watching this one. There's no point. This one has a lot that's going into it, a lot of backstory stuff that honestly adds to the experience.
Right. No, I totally agree with you on that. You know, if you want to rush this movie, like you said, skip it. But if you want to take your time, definitely check it out. All right, so this concludes our episode of The Good Bad Score and our conclusion for our episode of MCU movie reviews. So thank you again for watching this episode. Please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, we're all around. Share the video, tell your friends, neighbors, whoever, and follow our channel. And as always, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Colin.
And have a good one.